Hello and welcome to Getting Cloud Right, a video series dedicated to helping you navigate your path to cloud and IT as a service. I'm your host, Michael Krieger. I'm joined today by two IT operations and cloud application development experts who are here to help us understand an emerging trend in IT operations known as Platform as a Service. They're going to clarify exactly what Platform as a Service is, offer advice on when and how to use it, and explain how Platform as a Service can accelerate application deployment times and improve the overall collaboration between ops and apps teams. Josh Barry is a Senior Product Manager for HP Helion, and Arun Jacob is a Director of Product Management at HP. So, welcome Arun and Josh. Tell me, Josh, what's your role at HP?
Yeah, so I work on the Helion development platform. I split my time between talking with customers and making sure we're building the right things, and I also work with the engineering team to make sure that things are prioritized correctly and the products we're shipping are solving our customers' problems. And I focus specifically on application services that are part of the overall platform.
Okay, great. Arun?
I also work with Josh on the Helion development platform, doing the same thing, bridging between engineering and our customer. And I'm focused on our application and service marketplace, as well as our big data as a service effort.
Okay. Well, thanks, and thanks for joining me today. So, Josh, let me start with you. The cloud is enabling so many different as-a-service kind of functionalities today. Each is tackling a different area in IT. Let's talk about the primary challenges that Platform as a Service solves.
Yeah, one of the things we're seeing with cloud development is the application stacks themselves have been getting more and more complex over time. So, from the front end to the middleware to the back end, data tier, the ability for a development team or an operations team to manage all that complexity takes a lot of time, and that means they're not building features or adding value back to their business.
Okay.
So that's one driver. The second is really around designing for failure. So if you're building that stack up from scratch, you've got to then take into account that with the cloud things may fail. You may lose connectivity, you may lose a whole server. You've got to design for that in your application, and today's applications really aren't built to handle that.
One of the things that I've heard a lot is about the shortening release cycle and how Platform as a Service helps in that respect. Are we heading towards an industry that's in a constant state of release?
Yeah, one of the things we hear from our customers is they want to release more often, but maybe they're stuck in a release model or with technology that doesn't allow them to release as often. But we're certainly seeing a trend where enterprises are deploying things more quickly. They want to go from year releases down to days or maybe weeks, and that's a dramatic shift. And there's got to be some technology there to help them get there more quickly. So Platform as a Service is addressing that specific problem space as well.
So one of the things I love about cloud computing, Arun, is you ask 5 guys for a definition and you get 6 answers.
Yep.
So tell me, what your view, what is Platform as a Service?
Here's your 7th answer.
Okay, great.
So I think it's actually easier to talk about platform as a service if you can define infrastructure as a service and software as a service around it. Those things are easier for people to get their heads around. When we talk about infrastructure as a service, we're really talking about the virtualization of hardware, right? We're saying I can get my network and my storage and my compute as I need it, and I can consume it on demand. And when we talk about software as a service, that's actually consuming software in the same way, either via API or user interface. You actually just consume it and you don't care about managing it, right? So platform as a service is as a service in the same paradigm, but it's really around application development. That word platform is really vague, and what it means to me, the way it makes sense to me, is to really think about the building blocks that I need to actually build and deploy and maintain an application. So things like support for various languages, various runtimes, as well as the libraries that they have. Platform as a service can actually support and detect and deploy different runtimes, right? It can work with different languages. The way that databases and message queues and caches are managed in Platform as a Service is the way that it happens is the management and the maintenance of those things is taken care of for you, and as a developer you get direct access, you get a direct connection. So you don't have to worry about those things that are necessary but not sufficient. You have to have the database up, but a lot of times what we're finding in the industry is that the application developers are spending more time actually maintaining that stack than actually using it. So Platform as a Service makes that easier also. Things like logging, and then when we talk about availability, failure of instances and being able to start up a new instance, the ability to deploy application instances to different availability zones. All of that are things that you have to either script or your IT team has to script. All of that is taken care of for you. In other words, you make the policies and the platform as a service handles it for you.
So whereas I think of infrastructure as a service as basically the virtualization, as you say it, or the easy provisioning of the hardware layer, we're kind of adding a software layer with platform as a service?
Yeah,
Is that really what
we're
it
almost
is?
provisioning what we used to call middleware.
Okay.
Right? We're making that manageable instead of standing up huge teams to manage it for you.
So in our planning discussions, we talked about a whole bunch of the misconceptions that people have about platform as a service. Why don't you talk about what some of those are? What is it not that they think it is?
I think one of the things that we hear a lot is that it's not enterprise grade, that it's a toy, and that it's a concept. And some of the things that I just talked about, the logging, the monitoring, the availability zones, the failure restart, the failure detection, the auto scaling, all of that is what is required to run an application in the cloud at enterprise grade, and all of that's actually handled for you. So I think the notion that these things are not ready for the enterprise is a misnomer.
Well, one of the things that I have heard a lot is that a lot of people say they have PaaS, but they don't really have it. Why is that? What makes that happen?
That's a great point. So a lot of customers have spent a lot around automation of the infrastructure, and what that gives you is the ability to deploy maybe certain application stacks fairly quickly. But with Infrastructure Plus, that's kind of a term that people describe. You've got some virtualization, you've got compute, storage, and networking, and you've done some automation. But it's usually pretty focused automation for that particular application. You don't really have a platform that's flexible for multiple development teams to write applications and deploy things against. So that's a common thing we see talking with a lot of customers, that they've got Infrastructure Plus, and some of them consider that platform today.
Okay. So let's change gears a little. And let's talk about the maturity path. And we have IT organizations at different stages of their maturity, as well as this platform as a service and moving along its own maturity path. When does it make sense for an IT organization to start considering platform as a service as part of its overall infrastructure?
Yeah, one big driver is if they want to release applications more quickly. So we talked about the frequency really dialing up a notch, and companies wanting to get down to day-a-week deployment cycles. Part of that's the ability to get deployment environments, dev environments up quickly. And if it's taking a while to get environments in place and things aren't configured correctly and development teams are frustrated, that's probably a good time to start looking at platform as a service. You may have already done infrastructure. You may have been satisfied with the ability to spin up virtual machines quickly, but you're probably now at the point where you're wanting even more velocity than what the raw infrastructure components give you. So.
Okay. Arun?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, I think if you're still climbing up the virtualization curve or starting to understand infrastructure as a service, I don't think the time is necessarily right. But because that's such a huge enabler to be able to get network and compute and storage on demand, there's a secondary set of problems that comes up, and those set of problems are really around exactly what Josh was saying. You still have to climb a lot of hurdles to shorten your release cycle, right? You still have to climb a lot of hurdles to actually build in enterprise-grade management and monitoring capabilities. So when you've successfully cleared that hurdle and you're getting your compute on demand and you're able to basically create what you need, the next step is to make that reproducible and manageable and monitorable. All the things that you need to run an application at enterprise scale, that's when you should start looking at a PaaS.
So is this a natural evolution for everybody? Or are they going to start out on using something like Amazon Elastic Cloud and then end up saying, no, I need platform as a service now? Or does it depend on some other things as well?
I think it depends on a couple of factors. I think that some people can actually consume different kind of services as a service. Amazon does a lot of that. I think PaaS as a service really starts to make a lot of sense in the enterprise for a bunch of reasons. Some of those are sort of the way that enterprises are culturally built with, ops IT teams and development teams. Platform as a service allows you to separate the concerns of software development and, management and uptime, right? So the software developer doesn't care about managing the services they call. They care about accessing them and building new features. And the scaling and the failover and the availability, these are policies that can be agreed on by both teams. The services that are actually consumed can be managed by the IT team. So I think it starts to make sense in organizations and also situations where you have a lot of scale, where you have a very complex application and you may need to decouple certain parts of it. You have large teams that have to work together and coordinate. PaaS really allows you to isolate and break things down and actually, that was one of the things that you were talking about earlier, Josh, was really the ability to sort of isolate parts of your application stack and do development that way.
Does it bring the cost down to do it with this approach of a traditional application development and deployment? Is that one of the reasons people are looking at this? Or
I think
what are
if
some
you
of
do the
cost
feature
trade-offs?
math, absolutely, right? So time to release features, if you can drop the time to release features, you're dropping the engineering time, which is probably your most expensive resource,
Right.
when you do the books. And so, your feature to cost ratio drops or raises, however that works.
Yeah, I mean, when I was writing code, which granted was a long time ago, releases were a quarterly thing at best.
Right.
And today you see applications that are, as we say, constantly being refreshed and re-released.
Yeah, several
with
times
little
a day.
knowledge of the users, except that they suddenly have new features. They don't even realize it's been done. And is PaaS enabling that kind of
It is.
feature?
I think with the online world, you're no longer delivering shrink wrap, right? You're no longer delivering on-prem. And so a feature gets introduced that the limiter was the delivery cycle, right? And now there is no limiter there.
Right.
So now, because of that, you have a lot of pressure to release as quickly as possible, and PaaS definitely enables that.
So let's look at the other side of things. Let's take a look from the other side of the table. What are the important considerations and risks associated with platform as a service that IT should be looking at?
Yeah, one risk is platform as a service is a very prescriptive way of building applications, and not every application makes sense to put inside a platform as a service. Another risk or concern that we hear from customers, they're trying to take something legacy or existing, big application, runs on top of virtual machines, and bring it to the platform as a service environment. That effort is going to take quite a big of an investment, strictly because you have to redesign or pretty much rebuild from scratch that application from legacy to sort of what we call cloud native or built for platform as a service. And that's certainly a risk. So you got to look at what's the benefit of moving the application? Should we just leave it where it is and run it on its existing hardware? You've got to make all those sorts of trade-offs. It's not just an easy answer of everything goes in platform as a service and everything else sort of dies off.
Got it. So let's put this all in a real-world context. Can you share some real-world implementations of customers you've worked with and what they've gotten out of platform as a service?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We're working with a lot of healthcare and banking companies that are finding a lot of value both for internal application development as well as external apps that they're exposing to their end users or customers. And many of the banking and healthcare companies are looking at the lightweight nature of platform as a service. As an example, medical companies are now thinking of using platform as a service as a way to embed applications on medical devices and send data back to maybe a central server somewhere. Because the app deployment model and the runtime itself is very lightweight, platform service is sort of opening up new capabilities. And the nice thing is you use that platform, and the way you build an app for a medical device is the same way you build an app for a physical server. So your application teams have this ability to leverage their investment and their learnings across all these different devices.
So now, thanks to platform as a service, they use the same development tools or the same languages that they've used in the before, even though it's going into an embedded device.
Yeah, so all the tooling, the CLIs, the APIs, those will be identical. The deployment targets will be different.
Right.
But that's pretty powerful, and that's a change of paradigm.
Any other interesting deployment models that you're seeing?
Yeah, we saw one of the largest sports franchises or sports leagues actually reinvent their customer-facing website. And so they're delivering features on a frequent cadence. They've improved their development cycles, and they're all doing that with platform as a service. So they threw away the sort of legacy building code on top of infrastructure. And that's been working really well for them.
So to sum things up, what questions would you suggest that an IT organization ask themselves before they take a move into platform as a service?
I think one of the things that Josh talked about was the legacy applications. I think when you're looking at platform as a service, are you as a company looking at at it for net new applications, or are you thinking that it's sort of a forklift or an easy solution? Because as we've said, it's really not. It's more about, are you willing to, if you need to move that legacy application to the cloud, why? Is it because the workloads are incredibly variable and you're spending a lot of money building for the high water mark? Are you willing to commit to re-architecting that and potentially even building it from the ground up? Those kind of things. And also, are you architecting your applications, or do you have the in-house expertise to architect your applications to be cloud aware, where underlying resources may not be available, and you have to actually, in your application, actually account for that with, slightly compromised experience. You can't just go dark. So those are the kind of things I would ask. And it's not necessarily about platform as a service. It's about cloud in general. If you want to take advantage of the scalability of cloud and the ease of deployment that you get around IaaS, and even the ease of deployment and development with PaaS, are you willing to fundamentally shift the way that you develop software? And are you willing to take some things that were written for another architecture and bring them across? Because that's a significant effort.
It's interesting. I mean, this is a real inflection point then for many enterprises, where they can take a look at what they've got and say, okay, let's chuck it and redesign, because now we're going to be a cloud-enabled, cloud-first, cloud-whatever company, to take advantage of both development and deployment benefits of taking a platform-as-a-service approach. Do you see organizations making those hard decisions now?
I see there being a lot of effort and emphasis on net new stuff, but when you have something that has been running very well for 10 plus years,
right,
and it's a major financial revenue, it would take a huge hit to actually do it over again.
right,
Then a lot of companies make a very pragmatic decision, and so what we're starting to see is a lot of hybrid workloads.
Well, it's all about hybrid. I mean, there's still a lot of mainframe code running out there. All that COBOL code can't be wrong, right?
Right.
Well, I want to thank both of you, Josh and Arun. This has been great. Thanks for joining us on Getting Cloud Right and clarifying what platform as a service offers and when IT should consider it. But before we go, I know we have a couple of URLs that you had mentioned to me. I want to talk about them and just have you explain a little bit about what they are. First, there was some background on cloud applications themselves. That was 12factor.net. What's that all about?
12factor.net really clearly explains sort of the principles of cloud computing and how you should architect your applications for the cloud. It's kind of like, back in the 90s maybe, with the laws of distributed computing. It's the same kind of paradigm shift. Your resources aren't data center local anymore. They might not be there. So the way that you architect things needs to get, in some ways, simpler, but also in some ways you really have to think beyond, constant availability of underlying services. So 12factor.net is a great way, is a great thing to read for anybody that wants to really understand some of those shifts that they may be looking at as they take a legacy application forward.
Okay. Our next URL is the Helion Development Platform. Tell me a little bit about what we're going to find there.
Yeah, that's where you can go to try out Platform as a Service in our public cloud. And if you're interested, you can also download some software for free and run Platform as a Service on your own equipment. So you've got those two options. And then there's some videos on there, there's some documentation. It's kind of a good way to get started and maybe deploy your first Platform as a Service app, or just read more. So.
Okay, great. And the third resource was Cloud Foundry. What's Cloud Foundry all about?
Yeah, that's a community-driven Platform as a Service project. Lots of momentum behind it. Many large companies have signed on and said we're going to invest as this being the standard for our Platform as a Service architecture. It's a good place to go just to see what the community is doing, read about Cloud Foundry as a project that provides Platform as a Service, and I think they've even got some how-to links on how to get started with Platform as a Service. So another great overview site in addition to the Helion platform site.
Terrific. Thanks for all of these resources. And to learn how HP can help you navigate your journey to cloud, visit hp.com/Helion. For updates on future Getting Cloud Right videos, follow us on Twitter. Look for the handle @HP Helion Cloud. Thanks again for joining us. For HP, I'm Michael Krieger.